welcome to Church on the Rock. We're so glad that you joined us here today. In today's session, Pastor Roger is going to be continuing his series, Why I Don't Want to Be a Christian Anymore. Now, if you haven't seen any of the other sessions from this series, you may easily watch those by going to jesusistherock.org and clicking on the podcast section. In today's session, Pastor Roger is going to be looking at angry Christians and what the root of that anger actually is. Now, if you would like to give to our ministries financially, you may easily do so by going to jesusistherock.org and clicking the giving button at the very top right-hand corner of the screen. Now, as we prepare ourselves for this message, I just pray that God encourages this life change to spill over into your life.
Normally, when Christians are angry, they react as anything other than believers of Christ. All of the Christianity and beliefs of God and discipleship generally go out the window.
Why are Christians angry and how do we escape it? I feel like a lot of, we'll say, people in the world who call themselves Christians and they have every intention of doing the right thing. I feel like a lot of times I put my faith in other things and I get angry when those things fall apart. But the whole reason I should be angry is at myself for not putting my hope where it should be.
As a young Christian, I was angry about so many things. I was angry about abortion. I was angry about drug use. I was angry about homosexuality. I was angry about divorce. I was angry because I felt those are causes and issues that we should be fighting for the kingdom of God about. But that's not what Christ commanded us to do. Christ commanded us to love one another. And if you love one another, you don't have time to be angry about something. You love them.
Christians seem at times to be very angry when they're looking to find someone worse than they are, someone they can blame, someone they can look at and say, you're a worse Christian than me. Half the time I think it's rooted in your own sin and your knowledge of your own sin, to be perfectly honest.
A Christian who does not commit, does not make a firm commitment devoted to the gospel, they're going to be a frustrated Christian, and frustration causes anger.
What makes Christians angry?
Yeah.
I think Satan is the root of anger because he uses different situations in life and different people that come into your life to press different buttons and kind of set you off. And the way Christians react with anger or handle their anger with gossip or ugly talk or just kind of bitterness towards other people.
Turn in your Bibles to Luke 15. We're in a series called Why I Don't Want to Be a Christian Anymore. We're in part 4 of a 6-part series to give you about a 30-second overview of why I don't want to be a Christian anymore is because the word Christian's only found 3 times in the Bible. It's used in a very derogatory term. The first time, the followers of Jesus were called Christians. A king called them that in a very derogatory way, and he accused them of destroying a city, and he said it's those Christians that did it, those rebels, those heretics, those followers of Christ, they're the ones who did it. Somehow the name caught on, and as time went by, we began to call ourselves Christians. Jesus never called us Christians. Neither did his followers ever call themselves Christians. We somehow made that up. Jesus came up with a very different term. He came up with a term for his followers called disciples. But when you begin to call yourself a disciple of Christ, it narrows down the field. Suddenly, I can't treat you this way if I'm going to be a disciple of Christ. I can't have this in my heart if I'm going to be a disciple of Christ. And that's what we've been talking about, and that's what we've discovered so far. Now, those of you who know me very well know that it doesn't really matter what series I'm preaching or what subject I'm talking about. Sooner or later, I'm going to find my way to Luke's Gospel, chapter 15. For the purpose of our series this morning, Why I Don't Want to Be a Christian Anymore, I really only want to use one little snippet from this story, but in order to get to that place, I'm going to give you a quick overview. Really just because I can't pass it up. I love the story too much. But look at verse 1. Chapter 15, verse 1, it says, tax collectors And we've already been talking about tax collectors. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. I can tell you right now, the hardest part of preaching this sermon is going to be getting to my point, because I want to preach a sermon on every verse. I promise I won't. But look at verse 1. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus preach. Tax collectors, we said, they weren't just sinners. They had their own category of sinnerhood. Sinners called them sinners. They were the worst kind of sinners. They cheated everybody. They were infamous sinners. They were thieves. They robbed from everybody. They were notorious criminals. And yet they and other notorious sinners often came to hear. See, that one sentence, I could preach another whole sermon in this series, Why I Don't Want to Be a Christian, based on that one verse, because Christians, number one, don't like it when notorious sinners come to hear Jesus teach. Or in our case, come to hear us teach about Jesus. Christians don't like it when notorious sinners come to church. Christians don't like it when sinners show up at church. Churches and clergy and presbyters and congregations and associations and denominations, they actually have meetings and conferences where they come together and they argue and they debate and they have committee meetings and they vote on whether or not certain types of sinners should even be allowed to be a part of their church. This makes me feel like I'm in some sort of religious twilight zone when I think about that. It blows my mind. Where did we get the idea that the church was here for believers? I thought we were supposed to be a hospital for hurting people. I mean, I know that a hospital has to have doctors and nurses. I know that the church needs believers and disciples to be able to help people. But my God, can you imagine a hospital with no patients? Or worse yet, when a patient shows up, they say, no, you can't come in, you're sick. But I thought it was a hospital. It is. But we got doctors and nurses here, not patients. And yet that's the mentality of the church. And I tell you this is the truth, that we've had families, we just had a family not long ago, left the church because we allowed other people to come to church. And they left the church because we let this sinner join the church. This is amazing to me. This is mind-boggling to me. One constant we find in the life of Jesus is people who were nothing like Jesus loved him. And people who he was nothing like, he loved them. Verse 2. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people. He's even eating with them. He's eating with them. He's hanging out. He's not just preaching to them. That would be one thing if he were just, he's eating with them. He's high-fiving them and over there and laughing and cutting up. They're going berserk. They're going nuts. And the disciples were even saying, Jesus, aren't you worried that these people are going to start saying you're condoning their sin? That you're kind of soft on sin? I mean, you're sitting down and you're eating with these people and you're hanging out with them. And Jesus says, guys, this is who I came for. I don't just allow them to come in, but I go out, I came to seek out and save those who are lost. And I want you to go out into the highways and hedges and beg them to come in. It's not just that I'm letting them in, I'm begging them to come in. I'm wanting them to come in. I came to seek and save. When's the last time you went sinner seeking? When's the last time we sought out a lost person? When's the last time we went hunting for sinners? Jesus says, sure, my reputation, yeah, pretty much shot. They call me a wine bibber and a glutton, and they say I'm a friend of sinners, and you know what? They're right. And I love, how his disciples must have felt. He said, wait till tonight, guys. Tonight, we're going to Matthew's house. Yeah, the tax collector, you know what? And all of his boys are coming over, and they're throwing a party, and we're going to be there. You think your reputation was ruined before, wait till tonight. And religious folks would just go nuts. They would get so angry because he loved sinners. Let that sink in. They would get so angry because he loved sinners. Religious folks still get angry when the church starts loving on sinners. So anyway, Jesus starts telling his story. And I dare not read it to you because we just wouldn't get finished today. Besides, you know the story if you've been around at all here. The story itself starts out fine. The father had 2 sons. The younger son says, I want my portion of the inheritance now. Basically, what he's saying to the father is, Dad, I wish you were dead. But since you're not, can we just pretend you're dead and you give me my part of the inheritance that belongs to me? So right off, Jesus already sets the tone. He portrays this younger kid as the villain. Everybody sees that. It doesn't matter who you are in the audience. You're not long into a movie before you know who the good guy is and the bad guy, right? If you're watching a Western, just look at their hat. Good guy wears white hat, bad guy wears black hat, right? And you kind of know. How many remember the show Dallas? Remember the old show Dallas with JR and Bobby? I mean, they just come out with a new one. But, JR was the guy everybody loved to hate. He was the villain. You just knew. You love to hate the guy. And Bobby's the good brother that always does right. Now, you kind of know in a little bit into the story who the good guy is and who the bad guy. Well, Jesus has already set the tone that this kid has no respect for his father. He's come and said, I wish you were dead, but since you're not, can you give me my inheritance anyway? The first little twist comes when the father agrees to do it. You got to be kidding me. You're really going to honor this kid's request? You're going to give this kid his inheritance? That's the first thing that shocks them. Then verse 13 says, a few days later, this younger son packed all of his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all of his money with wild living. All right. Jesus is finally fixing to show us this kid's real colors now. He's fixing to tell us all about this punk kid and everything that he's done wrong. So everybody's kind of getting excited now. And then, of course, it just gets worse, though. In verse 14, it says, about that time his money ran out. A great famine swept the land. He began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed pigs. The young man became so hungry, even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything to eat. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying with hunger. I will go home and say to my father, Father, I've sinned against both you and heaven and am no longer worthy to be called your son. Take me as one of your hired servants. All right, the Pharisees live for moments like this. This would be the opportunity that they've been waiting for to make a public spectacle of this. We're not even going to call him a human being. This lower than the pig, swine, dirty scum of a son. You're not a son. You're not even just you're going to come back begging now for a job after you took your inheritance. You disrespected your father. You went and wasted your living with prostitutes and throwing your money away. And now you've been in the pigs. I don't even have time to get into what they thought about pigs. Pigs were the most unclean, vile, despicable animal there was anywhere on the planet. Don't ever offer them bacon or ham or a pork chop, because nothing gets eaten. They don't touch pigs. They don't touch people who touch pigs. And this guy is eating, and then he's going to come home. They're waiting for this. We're fixing to show you how we deal with sin in our church, is their thoughts. We're going to show you how we deal with people like you in our church. So verse 20. So he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, Jesus says, his father saw him coming. The Pharisees, their mouth is watering to see how the father is going to get this son. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father stops him. He says, his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put on him. Get a ring for his finger, sandals for his feet. Kill the fattest calf we have. We must celebrate with a feast. This son of mine was dead, and now he's returned to life. He was lost, and now he's found. Let the party begin. There it is. That's the great twist. That's where we thought we had everything figured out, how he was going to deal with this son. And Jesus throws this twist and everybody's jaw drops. You're about to witness a miracle this morning. The miracle is that I'm not going to stop and preach right here for like 30 minutes. I'm resisting everything in my body that wants to play with this story right here. Because that's the big twist. That's the gotcha moment in the movie. This is where the audience would go nuts, but I'm not going there. Not exactly, anyway. I could use it to illustrate my point this morning. The emotion that this story would have invoked on the religious leaders as Jesus told this part of the story. If this were a movie, the religious leaders would have got up and stomped out of the movie theater. They would have stood outside and boycotted the theater. They would have signed petitions. They would have forbade their congregations to ever set foot back in the theater again. This is heresy. This is horrible. This is irreligious. This is ungodly. There is no way. They would have went berserk. They would not just disbelief, not just disgust, but anger. Anger. Whenever Jesus would try and illustrate his unconditional, overwhelming, inexhaustible love for the human race, it would almost always bring out these emotions of rage and anger among the religious leaders. On many occasions, they would try to seize him and throw him off a cliff or stone him, and they eventually did crucify him. His crime? He loved sinners. That was his big crime. In fact, his last act on earth before being crucified, think about this. His last act on earth before being crucified is to turn to a guy that's never done anything right in his life and tell this guy, today you will be with me in paradise. Today, when I take my last breath and you take your last breath, in just a few minutes, we're going to wake up in the same place. The last thing he did, he lived it, he breathed it, and even as he died, he showed love. That's the kind of thing that enraged the religious leaders, which finally brings me to my one-point sermon that I've been trying to get to. Here it is. Here's my one point, verse 22. The father said to the servants, quick, bring me the finest robe in the house, put on him, get a ring for his finger, sandals for his feet, kill the fattest calf. We got to celebrate with a feast. This my son was dead, now he's returned to life. He was lost, but now he's found. And the party began. Meanwhile, The older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. He asked one of the servants, what's going on? And he said, your brother's back. He was told, your father's killed the fatted calf and we're celebrating because of his safe return. And the older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. It's true, he's just a character in this masterpiece story. But just the fact he included this in the story is evidence of what's going on as he tells the story. Think about this. He could have just as easily left this elder brother out, and it would have still been a great story. This son left home, wasted his living, got into pigs, came home, the father loved him, threw a party, all is well. But he included this other brother for some reason. He brought him and weaved him into the story for some reason. So let me just stop beating around the bush and let the cat out of the bag. Here's my 1 point. My 1 point sermon today in this series of why I just don't want to be a Christian anymore is Christians are just so angry. Christians are just angry, notoriously angry, inherently angry, pridefully angry, intentionally indignant, spiritual vigilantes. The scowl that we wear on our face is some sort of badge of Christianity. Jesus says, by this shall all men know you're my disciples, by your love one for another. We're not known for our love. We're known for what we oppose. Christians are known for what we oppose. If I'm a Christian, I can't do this. If you're a Christian, you can't do that. You can't go here, you can't do this because you're a Christian. That's what we're known for. Anger. We're known for anger. You see it in the pictures, the old pictures especially, of the angry nun with the ruler slapping the hand of the little child, you know, because he said something, and so she's like, yeah. That's Christianity. You see it in the face of the televangelist with the veins poking out of his neck as he screams, and you see it in the Christian mobs protesting at the abortion clinic. You see it in the posters that reads, God hates fags. Anybody remember the 70s sitcom Maude? Let's see how many old folks we got here. You remember Maude? B. Arthur was Maude. Now later she was, in the 80s, she was on the Golden Girls. Before she was a Golden Girl, she was Maude. And one of Maude's favorite lines was, anybody know? Who said it? Where is it, Clarence? God's gonna get you for that. That was Maud's favorite line. God's gonna get you for that. That's sort of come to be the calling card of Christians today. God's gonna get you for that. You going to hell. We almost say it with victory in our voice. You do that, buddy, you're going to hell. We even condemn people. Go to hell. Really? Is it that bad? It gets worse. You ever heard this one? I'll see you in hell. I'm thinking, really? You're not going to see me in hell. I'm going to the party. I'm going to the party. I'm not going to hell. There's a party going on right here. I'm going to the party. I'll see you in hell. You mad? That's one big reason I don't want to be a Christian anymore. Christians stay angry. In our story today, the Christians in the crowd are already angry. In verse 2, it says that This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain he's associating with sinful people. And then he gets over to verse 28, says the older brother was angry and he wouldn't go in. If there's one point Jesus is hammering home here, it's the fact that Christians are angry. They stayed angry at him. And the truth is, if we're his disciples and we live like him and we love like him, church, they're going to be angry at us too. They're going to be angry at you too. Religion hates it when you love sinners. They're going to get angry too. It's just one more reason I don't want to be a Christian anymore. I would much rather become a disciple of Christ. If I want to be like anyone in the story, I want to be like the Father. I want to follow the Father. What does he do? He throws a party. He kills the fatted calf, breaks out the good wine, says, my son was lost, but now he's found. He was dead, but now he's alive. Let the good times roll. Let's have a party. No bitterness, no anger, no unforgiveness, no grief, no sadness. Verse 32, he said, we had to celebrate this happy day. Your brother was dead and he's come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. We had to celebrate. We had to celebrate. Church, I don't know about you, but I have to celebrate. When lost people come into the church, I have to celebrate. You know why? Because I remember when I was lost and I didn't know Jesus and I came into the house and he saved me. When I see lost people come in, I have to celebrate. What else can I do? He said, son, we had to celebrate.